In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we are coloring conversations on the canvas of America. Tonight, our special guest is Mr. Alexander R. Stewart. Alexander R. Stewart is a purpose-driven entrepreneur, author, and mental health advocate whose work bridges businesses, innovation, and emotional wellness and cultural consciousness with a passion for building sustainable ventures and empowering others to do the same. Alexander has carved out a space where entrepreneurship meets healing. As an author, his writing is raw, reflective, and deeply rooted in lived experience, offering readers a lens into resilience, identity, and transformation. His voice is both poetic and practical, guiding others through the complexities of self-discovery and purpose. Alexander's advocacy for mental health, especially within Black communities, is personal and profound. He speaks openly about emotional wellness, generational trauma, and the importance of vulnerability in leadership. His work challenges stigma and creates space for healing. Deeply inspired by Nelson Mandela's courage, his father's wisdom, Malcolm X's clarity, Maya Angelou's grace, and Dr. King's vision, Alexander carries their legacy into every room he enters. His appearance on American Black and White is a celebration of truth, tenacity, and the transformative power of storytelling. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Alexander Stewart. Hello, sir.
Hi, Mr. King. Thank you for having me back. It's great to see you.
Yes, sir. How are you? Is there anything you'd like to add to your bio before we get into the show?
Not too much. I do sit on the two boards for the nonprofits, one to prevent suicide and mental health struggles amongst the civilian community, and then one as a separate one that prevents suicide and assists with mental health struggles and remembers those lost in the military community. I also, because I'm crazy, I was going to tell you this later. I just started a fundraiser on Veterans Day. I'll be doing a 22-mile ruck march in order to honor some of the friends I've lost this year to suicide, and also raise some funds for another nonprofit that provides free counseling to struggling active duty service members who do not want to get tied up in the behavioral health system because of the stigma. So this outlet provides them with licensed therapists and counselors outside of the military, sphere. So that way there is zero chance of any kind of pushback or any kind of reprimand or stigma at all.
Okay. Oh, wow. Those are really great driven purposes. And it sounds like some things that people really, really need, especially from that community work that you're doing. Let's start with your entrepreneurial journey. Can you tell us what inspired your journey into entrepreneurship?
That's a good question. I think more than anything, it was just growing up and kind of seeing certain people, strive for excellence and strive for more and wanting to achieve more in life. And then kind of seeing what they were able to do. And it's that old mentality of, if they were able to do it, then why can't I do it? And, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be, a rough, and they all say that too. Anybody who's ever made it to the other side has said, this is, people aren't seeing the immediate success. They missed the 3, 4, 5 years of struggle before they got there. And that also is something that appeals to me. It's one thing to, automatically get to a point and have something handed to you, but it's a whole nother ball game to earn it and work your way to it. And when you finally get to that, I wanted to be able to say to, my past self that, hey, we went through all of it and you set a goal and I'm here now. And it's because, you went from point A to point B, you did everything that you needed to do and you didn't give up. And I wanted to be able to have that ability to say that. And also I didn't want to, go through life and never have a shot or take that chance of getting to that point where I saw all these other people at.
So, if you can tell us, with your business, how did you come up with your business plan and your strategy to start out the execution of your business?
I think I went at it almost the same way I would assume most people do. I looked at what my skill sets were and what I could bring to the table, what would be marketable for myself and, my business. And being a leader within the military and being a senior leader, having been a drill, having led people in combat before, I noticed that I had a specific gift for words and motivating and getting people's mindsets correct and, getting people to focus on attacking a certain thing. So what I did was I took that and realized, well, I have a voice of command and I'm able to articulate words in a way that a lot of people can't. So the market for speaking and the market for motivation and helping people get mindsets, and it's a very, very, very large market. So looking at that and then looking at the unique skill set I have, having been in the military and having that leadership experience, I was able to create uh almost a answer for the demand of a more raw, a more real, a more strict approach to coaching and mentoring and speaking than what is normally on the market. And that's kind of what separates what I do from a lot of what other people do. It's not, one of those copy paste cut dry. And it's not a, hey, you can do it if you really want to try to do it. It's completely raw. It doesn't matter how much you really want to do something. You have to actually put in the work, and it's more of a reality check as well as coaching and mentoring. And I think that's why it does so well.
So, how did your first venture come to life, and what did it teach you?
So it was actually an accident. My first venture was a invitation to go speak with the Spring Valley, New York Rotarians from the International Rotary Club. And what had happened was I spoke on behalf of mental health for service members and veterans. And all I was doing was, it was Mental Health Awareness Month. So I was going around talking to people and just kind of getting the civilian community involved. It was
Yeah.
at the conclusion of that meeting that I actually was approached by somebody and they said, "Hey, how much do you charge to come and do this?" And I looked at her and I was like, "Oh, I did this for free." She goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. But how much do you normally charge to come to, because I want to book you to come back." And that was it right there. It was like a little light bulb. And that was actually the first offer, and it ended up in a year-long contract with that person.
Oh, wow. That's actually amazing. That when something, like, because it sounds like, I think this was one of the things that you're really, really strong about and you're really passionate about doing when you talk about these things. But I think when it leads to this situation, is one that I'm sure that you were ready to capitalize on it. And when you got that opportunity, uh, what was your thought process as to what would be the next thing as to going forward as far as your speaking engagements?
So immediately when I realized that there was the potential to, turn this into a business and take my passion, something that I love doing, and actually start earning from it, I realized that I had to kind of start shaping the conversations and actually like, be more concrete with the messages I'm trying to provide. And then also I would have to tailor different speaking you events and engagements towards the proper grammar, the proper verbiage. Whereas before, I would just go to these events and speak, just from the heart, open, and whatever came to my mind would. This is still the same thing, but now with the new approach, knowing like, okay, well, this is my customer, this is my audience, this is what we're going after. It's a little bit different because I have to make sure that I don't go off on a tangent, or I don't go off covering another subject, even if I'm passionate about it, and I stay, in that niche that I need for that event. And then also, um, I had to change some of my approaches to how I talked, because there are certain things that you can say and you can do if you're just speaking openly at an event for free. But, once you start monetizing that, you have to make sure that you're staying within specific guidelines. You don't want to cross any lines that you weren't supposed to cross. You have to make sure that, the entire intended audience is still captivated by what you're saying, but also not, put off.
Well, so then, for our audience, for the people that are actually watching, and those that want to think about entrepreneurship, what is some advice that you can give them, especially if it's about a speaking career that they're looking to get into?
Oh yeah. It would definitely be the same stuff I talked to a bunch of the new speakers about. One, you need to understand where your strengths lie, what topics that you truly do understand. And this has to do with your education, your cultural background, your upbringing. You need to understand yourself fully. This is very much a type of career path and, enterprise that you cannot enter if you do not have full self-awareness, because you need to know your strengths, your weaknesses. You need to know what topics you can cover, what topics you should stay away from. And then you also have to be, humble enough to admit that when it comes down to it, because you might get an event that's offered to you, and it might sound great, and it might be very profitable, and it might actually be a very good look for your career, but there might be something in that that just does not align with your strengths. Now, yes, you could go out of your way and try to change a little bit of what you do in order to meet that criteria. However, once you do that, if you start going into a realm that you're not comfortable with, or you don't know too much about, you could end up, metaphorically putting your foot in your mouth. And then from there, you lose credibility. So the biggest advice I would give anybody is understand your strengths, your weaknesses, be humble enough to realize you don't know everything. And then you have to take those strengths and weaknesses and then look at the market and then figure out, hey, where is there a need for what I can provide? And who are the type of people that I need to start talking to? Because you can't just go out and start talking to everyone and, trying to put your information out there. It has to be that niche that you're in. It has to be the people that want what you can provide, and you have to make sure that when you market yourself and when you promote yourself, you are putting what you do in front of the eyes of the right people.
Wow. Like, I hope that those that are out there listening, that they took a whole lot of notes when it comes to that, because I know, especially in talking about speaking, that's a thing that really requires, just acquired learning experience and things of that nature. Because when you have to captivate an audience in a room, I mean, that's a lot to do. Um, what challenges have you faced building a business rooted in purpose?
There's actually a lot, surprisingly. And the first thing I tell anybody who's starting out is you need to realize that sadly, the majority of the people that are already within the business, and when you're talking speaking or you're talking motivational stuff or advocacy, that kind of stuff, it is a very tight community and it is very much who you know. And sadly, within this community, I talked to a couple people that, are working their way up, and they kept asking, like, hey, how come if I ask for help, I don't really get it too much from a lot of people? the speaking community is so like vast that there is a lot of competition, and it's very rare that you'll find somebody that actually reach down and pull you up with them. I try very hard to make sure I'm one of those people, but at the same time, one of the biggest challenges you're going to have is when you are trying to establish yourself, when you are trying to build your name, it is going to be very difficult for you to do so because of the fact that there is such a talent pool in this specific field, right? And it's still a very new field. People have been speaking for, decades. However, the speaking field now is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So now you just have this overflow of personnel entering it, and it comes down to what I was saying before, is like you understanding yourself and what you can offer that everyone else that's trying to do the same thing can't.
Well, and knowing that the speaking industry has gotten that large, are there people that you kind of like, try to familiarize yourself with, people that you get to know in the industry? How is it that you're making your way through to continuously to grow and expand your business as far as speaking?
What I've been trying to do and what I keep making sure that I ensure is I reach out to people that are within almost the same area of expertise that I am. Personally, for me, I cover sociology, psychology, motivation, leadership development, team building, and then, of course, mental health advocacy. So those are the people I like to talk to. Those are the communities I like to surround myself with. That being said, I'm lucky enough to have found people that are similar to me. Like they'll help you because they just want to see you succeed. And it's a very unique community, especially because most of these people are veterans. So we have that mentality of like, yeah, I got you. I'm going to help you get to your next thing. And then if I ever need help, I expect you to do the same. And what I've been doing and what I advise anybody to do if you're getting into this field is create a circle of people that are like-minded within the same genre as you, and then protect your circle. Don't just let anyone in, and then also don't just try to extend out just to anybody who's walking by. The reason being is, like I said, is who you know. And if you do find people that are within your genre, within your expertise, guess what? All those people already have connections, and you become friends with this person. You work with this person, and eventually, what always happens is that they make one connection for you. That one connection turns into another connection, turns into another connection. And from when I first started out, like I said, I did a free speaking event. That's where I met somebody. I signed a contract. And then I started doing monthly shows under this contract. And then through those events and the person that I signed a contract with, I was able to meet other people who then, I expanded and I moved from point to point. But if I never started making those connections with people that were within my genre, within my field, that were within the market that I wanted to get into, then I wouldn't have made any of these connections. I wouldn't have gone from a person that was just speaking at events for free to being the guest at an American Foundation for Suicide Prevention as their main speaker last year. I wouldn't, I wouldn't be getting offers for TEDx, and sadly, I can't make it this year. But I've been getting offers, and that was also through connections that I've made through speaking and the people that I had known. Someone knew someone who was hosting the event. They sent an ABC News clip of me when they covered me on ABC News. They sent a couple other things, and I got a phone call. And then the same thing. Most of the really, really big events I'm getting are because somebody I'm connected with decided to share some information with someone they're connected with. And then that's how my network has been growing.
Wow. That in itself, I'm really, really proud of you though, because I think making your way through that industry, especially with you just explaining just how vast and how large it's gotten and the value that's there. I'm sure that's that took a lot of work, and still you still working to still kind of grow that. So like it to your knowledge at this point, is there a ceiling or is it just open?
From what I've seen and what others have told me, it really is just open. You can take speaking, you can take professional development and coaching as high as you want it to go. It's just as you grow, you need to realize that you can't just keep doing what you've been doing. You have to start bringing more to the table. You need to expand your knowledge or your tool belt, right? That's something I always like to tell people is you have a tool belt of skills. And as you grow, you can't just keep the same set of tools. You have to start adding new tools for new jobs. So that way, as you grow and your the charges for your events and how much you're asking for starts to grow too, it has to the demand has to meet what you can actually bring to the table. But like I said, for this field specifically, as long as you are relevant, you can keep people active and you know your audience and know how to connect with them, there really is no gap. You're going to keep getting events. I've been booked for the same place again and again and again. Um, and it's not, because they just really like me. It's because the entire time I was talking, their audience was completely captivated. Even the host was captivated, which is why they asked me to come back and why they'll pay me again to do it. And it's just, you really have to not only make people hear what you are saying, but feel what you are saying and relate to what you're saying and basically be very personable with each individual that's in your audience. Everyone has to feel like you're talking directly to them. If you can do that, then honestly, yes, there's no limit.
Wow. So how do you define success beyond profit?
For me, it has to be within the mental health advocacy that I do and then the leadership development. Um, I have said when I started speaking, if I could help one person who is struggling with mental health as an advocate, that's enough. Currently, I'm at 31 because of my speaking events and just reaching out and people finding me at these events or looking me up on social media and personally reaching out to me. Myself and my business, even though we're not a nonprofit and we're not really in the realm of suicide prevention, we have stopped or assisted with preventing 31 suicides in the past 12 months. And when you talk success, if you're a mental health advocate, if you can personally say, I have been on the phone or I have done the emails or I have been involved with 31 suicide preventions and all 31 people are still here, then I would very much chalk that up to success. When it comes to the other end on leadership development, motivational speaking, I find that I feel I have achieved the most amount of success when somebody who has been to one of my events who might not really know me reaches out on email or messages me on one of my social media handles and says like, "Hey, I just want you to know that you impacted my life in such a way that I will forever be thankful." And that has happened before. And I have people who also reach out for more advice. I might have only known them for that one time I spoke. But when someone reaches out to me after going to one of my events, whether it's the seminars for team building or if it's one of the mindsets to success, and they go out of their way to ask me more questions or just personally thank me, that tells me that while they were there or while I was able to influence them, I had such an impact that they still feel that there's either something that I can bring to the table for them, or they feel, you know, enough, passionately enough that they want to reach out and just simply say thank you.
Wow. What's your approach to building a brand that reflects your values?
I would say when you're deciding, your brand and you're deciding your label and you're deciding what market you're going to get into in every single aspect of your business, you need to make sure that everything is deeply rooted in the things you are passionate about. Don't go hunting what's profitable. Don't go hunting, what's marketable right now, and what's in demand. Everything about your business needs to be 100% through and through you, your passions, and whatever, drives you, because it is a task to establish a business. And then once it's established, that's great. It's there. But now you have to build your name. Now you have to make connections. Now you have to, prove your value, and you have to prove your credibility. And this takes time and effort and so much energy. And if you are not, 100% committed into your brand, and if you are not 100% committed into, all the goals you're trying to accomplish, it's going to fall short. That, and the fact that if you do create your brand in any way outside of, what you really set out there to do, eventually your business, your brand might turn into something accidentally that you just aren't passionate about anymore, or it might take you in a direction that you just don't want to go. I've worked with friends before who were speakers, and the one of them decided, "Hey, I'm going to open the door to politics." And I warned him, because before that, he was a speaker that was doing leadership development and mentality like I was. And he opened that door, and he started doing all of these political speaking events. And this was because he saw the success from, guys like Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, and all those others who were going out there and, opening that door and getting into that too. And sadly, he just told me about 2.5 weeks ago that he's going to get out of the business. He's done. He can't do it anymore. He started, going to places, and then they started trying to tell him that he needed to, cover certain topics. And it was, pushing him away. And instead of, his business being what he set out to do and what he loved, it turned into hey, how can I, please the customer kind of thing. And then as a speaker, if you're going out there and you're talking on things because someone else told you that you have to talk on these things, and you're not going to connect with people anymore. You're not going to, feel that passion. You're not going to have that drive, because it's not coming from you. It's not coming from the heart. So um, he had said that he lost his passion. He lost his drive. And then he also said that he could tell when he was speaking to people that that connection he had with his audiences wasn't there anymore.
Mm.
And hopefully, I hope that he gets back out there. He has the rights to his business for a couple more years, but for now, he said that he just needs to take a step, back, and kind of reevaluate things. And maybe he's going to rebrand himself, maybe not. But that just goes back to, my advice to anybody is, if you're going to get into any kind of business, make sure that you stay true to what your brand was supposed to, stand for, and what you stand for. That way you don't end up in that situation where you have to do all this hard work, but then, it morphs and changes into something outside of your passions.
Tell us about your brand.
So unspoken words is a concept that I created based off of, my book, Unspoken Words, The Thoughts of a Soldier. And the whole concept behind the book was to bring to the table out loud all the internal thoughts, struggles, and emotions that people don't necessarily share. And when I branded my company and I created my business, I wanted to still incorporate that. Hence why the business actually became known as Unspoken Words. The whole purpose and task behind what I'm doing is, when I do go to these events, I want people to know that they're going to hear the stuff that people don't normally say. It's going to be some, off the wall, crazy stuff, but it's always going to be something that we all are thinking, but we just don't say. And I want that concept to stay with what I do, whether it's leadership development, whether it's motivation, whether it's mental health advocacy. The whole concept behind myself and what I bring to the table is I'm not going to sugarcoat and talk to you as if, the things we're talking about are just these cut, dry, copy, paste topics. I'm going to get into the nitty gritty with you. We're going to talk about when it comes to motivation, we're going to talk about why every time you go after a goal, after a while it fizzles out. It's because you don't understand motivation. It's because people that are out there pitching, hey, I'm an expert on motivation, they don't understand motivation because they can do it, but they lack the actual scientific knowledge in psychology to understand the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And that's kind of something I bring to the table when it comes to motivational speakers. I don't go out there and say, hey, you can do something if you really want to. I straight up say, everyone who comes out here and tells you that you can do anything that you want to do just because you want to do it is completely full of it. And let me explain why. And then I'll break it down. And after the first event where I did that, I realized that's my marketability in that realm, at least for motivation. I'm not the person that gets out and says, hey, you can do it if you really want to, or this is how I do it. I'm the guy who says it's going to be different for all of you. But the key thing that you need to understand is intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. And this is something you don't learn unless you go to, and take psychology in college. Well, I have. Let me tell you what it means and then go that route.
Well, so if you could tell us this, because I think when you mention, that for some people and how they get into the actual speaking and the things that they're telling people, I mean, how do you learn, or where did you learn to actually craft your messages that you have for your audiences?
I think a lot of the stuff that I'm involved with are all personal experiences tied to my upbringing, my culture, my parents, and then the military. Because all the realms I'm really operating in have to do with team developing, right? That's Army through and through. Leadership development, also military, but also, upbringing and background and watching leaders within my family, within my communities, take charge and do what they have to do. And then when it comes to the mental health advocacy, anyone who knows me knows how much I struggled personally and how I took all of that, and instead of allowing myself to get to a point where I couldn't climb out of the hole that I dug myself in, I decided to use the motivational mindset and leadership development that I learned to essentially coach myself out of the hole I put myself in, and then, you know, start shaping what I was going to say to other people based off what works for me. And I think that's why it's been so successful. It's because it's not I read this in a book once. This is hey, this is tried and true information and methods that I have done personally. And because of, my background, my upbringing, and the way I approach and talk to people, I don't, I try not to give off hey, I'm up on this pedestal and you should try to be like me. I give off more of an impression, or I try to give off the impression of, hey, I'm just like you.
Mhm.
And you want to get from A to B. Well, let me tell you how I got from A to B. So that way you can get from A to B. And gearing all of my conversations, all of my speeches, all of the seminars and the exercises and the training programs I put together towards that mentality on make it relatable, make a connection with every single person there, make it understandable too. That is a big hurdle a lot of people in the speaking realm seem to forget and also confuse. Um, People have to always remember when you're going into a room, you're talking to people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different educational levels. So you need to make sure that everything you say is universal. You don't want to throw in sophisticated language that only a certain demographic of people are going to understand. It needs to be relatable, and you need to be able to make a connection with every single person that's in that room, because every single person that's in that room is your market. And then with every person that, you put off by either making them feel disconnected or making them feel uncomfortable, that's another, 10, 20 other personal connections you can make at different events. Because speaking, like I said earlier, it's all about that credibility. And the only way you get that credibility is by people going and hearing you speak and then talking to other people about, what they felt or what they learned through your speaking. And then that's how you're going to grow your enterprise within this community.
Let's transition over to your work as an author and storyteller. Can you tell us what led you first to write your first book?
So I was struggling with mental health pretty bad, and I was seeking assistance from the military for it. And it was a prolonged process. It took me months to get actually seen and be assessed. And when I was assessed originally, they tried to med board me out of the military. For listeners who don't know what that is, essentially it's the military telling you, okay, well, you have these issues. Well, you're unfit for duty. So we're going to, evaluate you, see how bad they are. Then we're going to medically retire you. So instead of being met with, compassion and understanding and people that are willing to try to fix the problem, I was originally met with, all right, well, you're the problem. Let's just, boot you out. So I ended up writing down all those emotions and all those struggles, all those unspoken words that no one was letting me say or no one wanted to hear onto paper. And that all those different, passages and messages formed their way into unspoken words, the thoughts of a soldier. And
Mhm.
then moving forward from there, the other books are very similar. They're all I'm working currently I'm working with somebody on developing a book about military fathers and having to balance being a service member in whatever branch and also being a husband and being a father, and all those challenges, the disconnections that are made, the obstacles, and just the stress and all the stuff that, once again, that father is going to leave unspoken because they don't want, their children or their spouse to know they're struggling. They don't want them to see that. They don't want to feel like a burden. So I'm working on that. I'm working on another book that has a bunch of poetry that's going to encompass everything that a growing man in this society is going through. I'm moving away from the military aspect like I did on my first book, and it's literally just going to be, from a man's perspective, a bunch of unspoken and unknown thoughts, struggles that we encounter on a day to day.
When you was first on this show, I got a chance to read a few of your poems that you sent me. Can you tell us why the poetic part? Why the book of poems? What does the poem symbolize for you, and why would you want to do that kind of a book?
I think it comes down to something that we all kind of know about our society. The number one uniform language that everyone can understand is music,
Mhm.
right? You don't need to know what words are being said. You don't need to even really know the culture to know you like a song. Perfect example. In the 2000s, that song Numa Numa came out. I still don't know what language it is, but I've listened to it about 100 times. And the same can be said about a bunch of other music. You might not speak Spanish, but you might love Hispanic music or Spanish music, or you might not be, who knows, from whatever country, what have you. Music is universal because it's not about the words and it's not about the message, it's about the feeling. And the same thing comes with poetry. A lot of people know it, but a lot of people forget. Poetry is just music without the rhythm and
Mm.
without the melody. It's just the words. Now there's still a rhythm there within the words, but it removes all the backdrop. And now you're just you faced alone with these raw thoughts and emotions. And I felt that with the book that I was writing, with the intent, which the intent for that original book was to connect with people that were struggling with mental health, also to allow those who have people that are struggling to understand them better and kind of create a bridge between those struggling and those who are not. The whole intent was to create something that was uniform, and that could transcend any kind of boundary. And poetry, to me, was that answer. I might not be able to sing like I used to, but I can still write on paper, beautiful words and my raw emotions that, if you word it correctly, people can feel what you're feeling. Even if it was years ago, the pain on the paper as they're reading it, they can feel that pain. And it's the same concept as like when you're speaking, right? If I'm writing something and I can't connect with the audience that's reading what I wrote, then it's not going to do well. So you need to find a way to get what you're trying to say across to people, to actually connect with them and get your readers engaged and make them want to keep reading and keep hearing what you have to say. And just in my opinion, when it came to the realm that my first book was in, poetry was really the only way to go about that.
So, is it safe to say that the book of poems are like a personal, creative, intimate moment that you want to get to your audience to not just pull them in, but they feel all of this, the feelings and the emotions and everything. Where it's like basically the rhythm is what they pick up, that they continue to want to have it for each and every poem that you've written.
Absolutely. That is exactly the intent behind the book. You've seen it, you've read it. The very first one is one of the most intense. Um,
Yeah.
but it's also one of the most simple ones. The first poem in that book is called Sandy Boots, and it's just a very simple, short, almost whimsical poem saying like, hey, those characters that you meet in real life that are veterans and service members that are all rough around the edges, they're not rough around the edges. They just have a little sand on their boots, right? And that was my way of getting anybody who never served, who couldn't relate to the more deeper poems within that book. That was my way of getting them captured and get them in, because everybody knows somebody who's a little rough around the edges, so everyone can relate. And the rhythm and the whimsy behind it, it draws people in. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked to someone who's read the book and like, yeah, the first one was, I was like, oh, this is cool. This is kind of funny. We're going to get in here. And then I opened the second one and what happened? And that you've seen it. The second poem is Alarm. Alarm is an award-winning poem that I have. And it takes you from that whimsical, hey, he's rough around the edges, to now you're with me in Afghanistan and we're under attack, and you're seeing the battle, you're feeling the battle, you're experiencing firsthand what happens to service members in these intense situations, and then you're experiencing the loss of a friend who saved another friend in combat, and then the emotions, the thoughts and the struggles of everyone else who's still alive having to say goodbye. But if I opened the book with that poem, it would have only captivated a specific audience, those who understand. And it's the same thing I'm saying about structuring who you're talking to. The reason why I opened my book with that initial poem that's whimsical is so that way, even if you weren't in the service, you would understand, because everyone, like I said, everyone has a somebody, whether it's a grandpa, an uncle, a friend who's rough around the edges. They've been through some stuff, and so everyone can relate. Now, not everyone can relate to losing somebody in combat and all of the stuff that comes with that. However, because of that rhythm, because of that connectivity you've made on the first page, they're in it, and they've already been put into a state where they're emotionally connected to the book because the first page had something that very much related to them. So now they're in their emotions, they're a little more vulnerable. So then you throw the second one at them and that's it. Now they're in it. And there's a mixture between, wow, this is intense, I want to walk away, but now there's also a, well, I really like the first one and I related to that one. This one's intense and it's sad and whatnot, but now I'm interested. I need to see what's next. And that's kind of how I structured that book. That's how I structure every session that I've ever done, every speaking engagement I've ever done. Is you have to people, you have to bring them in. You have to make them comfortable, but then you need to put them on the edge, so that way they want more. They want to know. It's like a cliffhanger. Cliffhangers are made for a reason for TV shows and books. You want people to want more, and that's the biggest thing with this whole industry, with speaking and all these events, is if you can't create that desire and want and need for more from you, then after you do that one engagement, essentially every person, whether it's 100 or multiple thousands of people, they've heard you once. They don't need to hear you again, because like, oh, okay, yeah, that was a thing. I did it once. It was cool. You have to make sure that you capture the hearts and the minds of everybody who's willing to give you the time to hear what you have to say. And they deserve it too, because if they're taking time out of their day, or if they paid to come see you speak, you deserve to give them everything, everything you have, and then also they deserve to receive, like, the to the fullest extent, everything you can bring to the table.
So, what themes do you explore in your writings?
So I've gone on the routes of mental health struggles for military service members. I've worked with just helping people relate to combat.
Mhm.
Then I'm also exploring new avenues now, where we're talking, lifestyles and how people lead their lives, and almost the unwritten, unspoken things that are in the shadows, and trying to bring those to light to bring awareness. Whenever I write something, I've noticed that the key component behind everything is self-awareness. And I think self-awareness does really well when you're talking, marketability, and just taking it on like an entrepreneurship level, because every single human being is always in this perpetual endeavorment for self-awareness.
Mm.
So by providing that, no matter what style of writing it is, if you can bring some kind of self-actualization, self-awareness to your writing, you're going to connect with the readers that you intend to reach.
So, let me ask you this, because I think that's really, really interesting. Um, just when you mentioned that and how you explore that. But can you tell us this? Like when you're actually writing, have you thought that maybe with this lane, because I don't know if that lane is crowded or not, but have you thought of actually going outside of that and maybe doing something like some sci-fi, doing some romance, things of that nature? Have you thought about doing that, or are you just going to stay with this for the moment?
So, honestly, I'm a huge history buff. So
Oh,
I very much have thought about maybe like a medieval fantasy
okay.
book with some deep rooted like history behind it. And I've played with it. I have concepts written on the side. Currently, I am very much on the path I'm on, strictly because of what I said earlier. This is what I am passionate about. This is what drives me.
Mhm.
So, all of my writing and all of my speaking engagements are all done outside of my regular 9 to 5. So I'm using my spare time, to do all these things, time that I could rest and time that I could, relax. So what, even though I want to explore a lot, and I have a talent for writing in romance, in the romance genre. I know that.
Mhm.
Um, I want to explore some others, but what I'm trying to do and what I'm waiting for, what I advise anyone to do, is I'm waiting for that moment where, like, internally, both
Okay.
in my heart and mind. I can tell myself, hey, like, I want to go this route now. You
Yeah.
know, I've explored everything that I wanted to do in what I'm doing, or I'm at a place now where I can leave this for a little bit and then step outside and do these realms, which of course would benefit. I'll tell anybody who's in any kind of entrepreneurship. Eventually, you're going to have to expand a little bit, but you have to make sure that every bit of expansion is deeply rooted in your passions and things you actually want to do, which is why, like I'm saying, because I'm so passionate on what I'm doing now with, the 22-mile ruck march coming up for, getting funds for suicide prevention and all this other stuff. Like, that's where I'm at right now. That's where my heart's at. So I'm just keeping my mind focused on that. And then once I get to a point where I'm comfortable with how much I've done and I can, shift gears a little bit, then I'm definitely going to open that door. But currently, I'm just, staying the course and staying focused on the things that are extremely passionate to me just because of time constraints and then also energy.
Well, I agree with you on that because I can say that I've actually it's been run through my mind now for like months on the end now. I'm actually going to delve outside of what I normally do, and I'm actually going to do some sci-fi. I'm really interested in seeing how that turns out because I always look at those I guess that are like on that I don't know, I guess we'll call it that hard or whatever have you that's able to pull that in and they can make it do so many things. I want to try my hand at it and see what that looks like. And because I mean, I like your writing, and that's why I wanted to ask if you were thinking about just venturing outside to do something else. Um, can you tell us how do you balance vulnerability with empowerment in your storytelling?
It's a very simple thing to say, but a very complicated skill.
Mm,
So it is one of the hardest things for, I think, any person to do. But in order for you to really connect with people, you
mm,
need to be 100% willing to make yourself completely vulnerable to the people that you're talking to. But when it comes to connecting with an audience, when it comes to writing, when it comes to speaking, that's actually where all your power comes from. That vulnerability that you're showing everyone that that wants to listen to you or wants to read your stories, read your books, it shows them your one humanity, two relatability, and then three your passion and your pain. And as crazy as it is to say, people connect with two things more than anything else: love and pain, because
mm,
there are two of the deepest emotions that we feel as human beings. So when you're creating that vulnerability and when you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable to your audience, and you're raw and all of your emotions are out there, they latch on to those emotions that they relate to the most. And it's not you know a judgment on their part, and it's not a threat to you or yourself, but power. Because through that vulnerability and through the sharing of all of your emotions and all of the words you have to say, that connection that you're making is the power that you need in order to succeed within this field. So I say it's hard because naturally, as humans, we don't want to create that much vulnerability for ourselves, right? Everybody wants to stay within what they're comfortable with. If you want to succeed in writing, if you want to succeed in speaking, you have to be willing to let that go and allow yourself to be vulnerable, because in your vulnerability is going to be the most amount of success. Because, like I said, love and pain, they are both deeply rooted in personal vulnerability. So, in order for people to connect with those two things, which, like I said, from what I've seen from my experience, are the two most common things people connect with. You have to be willing to lay it all out there.
So, what's your writing process like? Is it structured or is it intuitive? What is it?
It is so structured, it is not even funny. Um, I have a planner which is sitting literally right next to me, which I will hold up. And I actually do a seminar on this, on meeting goals, but I have a planner. And as you can see, it is broke down by day. So it is a lot. Running a business is a lot. Trying to grow is a lot. And believe it or not, anyone who's trying to get into the field, they're actually separate things. Everyone thinks that, oh, business, it's all the same. No. Managing the business is one thing. Advertising the business is another thing. Promoting the business is another thing. Developing, your genre and your marketability, and then finding your customers, that's a whole, it's all a different thing. So I actually force myself to write down in a planner every day, hey, this is what I'm doing today. And then there is a no fail rule for me on these things, and I have to keep it that way, because especially with speaking and writing, if you don't stay structured and you don't, focus on specific tasks,
Mhm.
because this art is a very emotional art, you will start going everywhere. And, you'll lose track of what you were out there trying to do, or you'll lose track of like the goals you had for this week. So, at least for me, and it might just be because of the military background, it is very cut, dry. The only thing that I allow to be fluid is writing.
Mhm.
So I don't tell myself what I'm reading that day. I don't tell myself if it's going to be, me jotting down some notes for a motivational seminar or a leadership seminar or mental health. But everything else, whether it's like, hey, I need to advertise these events today, I need to do these today. But when it comes to the actual writing, that's the only thing that I allow to be, um, you know, liquid, as you could say.
So, how do you hope readers feel after engaging with your work?
Honestly, I hope they feel some kind of emotion. That's really it. I mean, as anybody, like as a performer, as a speaker, as a writer, it doesn't matter what emotion they feel, but the mark of you being able to do what you do well is being able to draw some kind of emotion out of them. And as long as I can do that, whether the emotion is anger or sadness or, whatever it is, as long as I can pull something out of the people that are listening to what I have to say or reading what I have put on paper, then that means I'm doing something correctly. The second that stops is when I have to reevaluate my approach to things.
What's one passage or chapter that holds deep personal meaning to you?
In life or within the,
Well, your overall scope, your overall life.
I would probably say the first couple years of military service for me. Um, I joined young, as most of us do, so I didn't really have a full scope of my personal identity.
Mhm.
So that stage of my life, which included 3 combat deployments, really kind of sculpted the person that I grew up into being. Because what a lot of people don't realize is, one, psychologically, as a male, your brain's not fully developed until around the age of 27. So your personality is going to change. Everything about you is going to change, because literally who you are isn't done being developed. So when you join the military at 18, 19, 20 years old, there's a lot of influence, in a good way or a bad way, that can occur. And a lot of what you go through in those stages, for veterans and a lot of service members, is an everlasting and permanent, you know, time of structure and change in our lives. So I think that time frame for me is probably what has stuck the most and has affected the most, and it's really instilled a lot of the things that, people who see me speaking or writing see me doing, which is helping others and helping others to succeed and not allowing people to fall behind if you have the power to do something about it. And for me, I believe that's all values that, yes, they were part of the community I grew up in. They were part of, the parents that I had and the culture that I have, but also that military culture and mentality of like no man left behind kind of thing. That has really stuck with me, and I believe that has really helped me um, succeed. It's also given me that raw edge that a lot of, normal civilians don't have. So it's
Right.
helped me bring that to the table. And I think the same thing can be said for all those speakers you see out there that are doing really well, that are all military. There's a reason why we connect with the civilian population. We're a little different, and it's that difference is what helps us stand out.
Let's transition over to your work in mental health advocacy. And I know that this is some of your major work and what you like doing most. Can you tell us what inspired you to become a mental health advocate?
It was a mix of what personally had happened to me with my mental health. I was rejected for treatment in 2017, 2018, simply because um, they didn't have the personnel to treat me along with more severe cases. So, when I went to seek treatment the first time, I was told that I was for sure PTSD was present. However, I was low risk. So because I was a low risk soldier and I wasn't going to hurt anybody, I wasn't going to hurt myself. They said, regrettably, at this time, we cannot see you. I'm saying that in a nice way. What they actually said to me was completely different, but
Yeah, I get
it's not something I want to repeat again. But
right.
so my personal struggles with that mixed with losing as many people as I have lost to mental health and suicide, going down the list of almost 30 people I've served with. And then two, 2.5 years ago, one of my younger brothers, that was kind of something that drove me to step into this realm. Because originally, I actually had no intention of getting into mental health advocacy and mental health. I just wrote the poems and I wrote the book just to help me process my stuff while I was waiting to actually have someone else help me. But and then the speaking for those events, I was invited just because of a news article that was published about my book. And someone reached out like, "Oh, okay. Well, we have a mental health event. We'd like to have you come speak."
Mhm.
And it was at that first mental health event, which was actually in Warwick, New York. Um, I was speaking and I was looking around, and I knew everyone that was walking around. It's a big event in a town. Everyone that was walking around had stopped moving. There wasn't a single sound, and everywhere I looked while I was talking, there were just tears, and you could see sorrow and you could see pain. And I realized that everything that I had been keeping inside me and every emotion that, I'd been struggling with, I was actually able to convey this through a microphone to, a couple hundred people that I had never met before.
Mhm.
And the effects that had after I had spoken is kind of what pushed me into the realm. I had a lot of people. I always tell this story to new authors and new speakers because they always tell me I did an event and no one comes up and talks to me. And, it's really discouraging. But I tell them, so that first event, I had my book with me, I had a table. Not a single person came up and talked to me at my table. They looked at my book, they looked at the stuff, and just walked away. After I spoke, I could not get 10 seconds to myself until the end of the event.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was something that I realized. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, you know, because you're there and whatever, people are just going to see you. But that connection that I made through speaking and with the emotion and by putting my vulnerability out there made me realize, oh, like there's something here that I can help people, but at the same time I can also expand what I'm doing personally with my business. And what had happened after that event is, for the first 5 or 6 live events, while I was building that credibility, while I was building that name, the same thing would happen. I'd be at an event, I'd be at the table, and no one would come talk to me. And it wasn't until after I grabbed the microphone and they're like, "Oh, by the way, this is the guest speaker," and then I speak, that for the rest of the time I'm at this event, I would never be left alone.
Right.
And it was kind of that realization, and also the cause and effect of speaking for mental health, that made me want to pursue it more, because I realized that I have the ability to connect with people. Um, with this specific topic. And I think just has a lot to do with my personal struggles and how many people I've lost, and the fact that of all people there, I understand. And one thing that someone had said to me after I spoke, which also made me want to stay in the mental health realm, is I spoke and I talked about my struggles and I talked about my personal journey. And I had a woman walk up to me afterwards and go, you know, my husband's a fireman, and you're up there talking about service members and first responders and mental health, and you are this big, couple 100-pound guy, that looks very serious and very like scary and very mean, and you're up there telling everybody, hey, I struggle, and this is what I struggle with, and this is what I'm going through, and I promise you this is what everyone you care about is going through, and here are the signs, and this is how you can see it. And she had said, if I had looked at you from the surface and just judged you off of that, I would never have guessed, um, that something was actually wrong with you, or that you were going through anything. And then she said the same thing with her husband. While I was speaking, I didn't get to meet him. He actually left. And turns out that she said that he got really emotional with the stuff I was saying. And I guess he had never talked to his spouse, about any of it. So he walked away, to go address what he was feeling. But when she had told me that I had broken that stigma that she had for the first responders, and it helped her kind of understand her spouse more, that was it. That I had 100% buy-in at that point.
So at that moment when, the people weren't actually engaging with you until after you spoke. So now after this moment where you've spoken and now you can't get a moment to yourself. How were you feeling? What were you feeling to see that sudden change like that?
I mean, I think I feel the same thing anybody who is, in any kind of business. First off, relief. If I'm being honest, thank goodness, I didn't travel all the way out here and set up all this stuff and, spend an entire day to just have nobody come talk to me at all. Um, Also, even motivational speakers and authors and all, and mental health we get self-conscious too, You're like, oh man, does no one want to talk? Does no one care? Kind of thing. So when they came up, of course, you're like, whew, thank goodness. And then the next thing after that is, okay, now I know how I got them engaged. So how do I keep them engaged? And then moving forward, how do I skip that phase of quietness before the engagement? How can I? So while I'm talking to all these people, there's all these different game plans going through my head of how I can be better, how I can, make sure people are engaged right from the get go. Because from a business perspective, right, every person I wasn't engaged with before I talked is a lost venture, a potential venture, or a potential network opportunity. So how do I fix it? And what I did was I actually set up a table, and I would bring either interns for my business, or somebody that was volunteering for the day to sit at the table for me, and I would go hunting. That's what I call it. I'd go out into the crowd and just introduce myself, and tell people what I'm there for. If I was a guest speaker, you just slip that into the conversation too, and pique their interest. And I kind of tried approaching it that way. I'm at that point now where I don't have to do that anymore, but it's definitely something that I had to do when I first started out.
Mhm. So, how do you address stigma around mental health in Black communities?
Oh, um, simple. I get out there, and one of the first things I'll always do is I'll get in front of a crowd and say, I'm a military service member, still active duty. I'm a combat veteran. I got 3 tours. I've been boxing for almost 30 years, and I'm 200 something pounds, and I have mental health problems. Tell me that I'm weak. And that's the first thing I'll get up and say every time I'm at one of these events. And then the way I address the rest of the stigma is simply by calling it what it is, and calling it stigma, and pinpointing it and saying it out loud and making people face it. When it comes to, um, let's say, the Black community, I think I said it with you last time. You
Mhm.
know, we constantly within the Black community tell, men that they're not supposed to feel anything. They're supposed to keep their stuff under control, and it's weak to do this, and you have to be this figure, and we put it up on a pedestal, and then all this stuff happens. And our whole culture, because of how the roots that it has, right? People couldn't show emotion 100 years ago that were Black at all, because what are you going to do? Nobody cared. There's a lot of stuff, especially in America, especially during like the time of slavery. Before that, our culture grew up out of necessity to hide emotion, and bottle everything up and just let it go, because they had to.
Mhm.
And now we don't necessarily have to, but it's so seared into the culture and into the upbringing and into the background of the community that we still do it, even though we don't need to. And that is something that I always will bring up, and I will always try to point out. The biggest thing I tell anyone when you're trying to combat stigma: call it out. All of the things that people say, like men don't do this, or a father can't do this, or whatever have you. Um, by stating the actual thing, like that myth, and then debunking it in front of everybody and kind of really making them think about it. I had an event where I had said Black men shouldn't cry, and a bunch of people started clapping. And I'm like, well, I didn't say for what reason. I'm like, would you not cry for the birth of a child, or some other like that, out of happiness? And they're like, oh yeah. I'm like, okay, so why can't you, if a friend of yours passes away, or if you're struggling, why can't you? And then it got quiet, and then we just started playing a game together, like me and a crowd. Okay, what's acceptable? What's not acceptable when it comes to that? And by getting people to actively engage in conversation about stigmas, and about these silly rules we put in for ourselves, I think that was the best way to you know, get rid of them, by making people acknowledge them. It's the same thing when you're talking. I'm a equal opportunity representative for the military, and I do training sessions for people about racial bias and all that other stuff. And instead of going out there and telling people, um, "Hey, no one's racist. There isn't. Race isn't a thing anymore." I get up and tell everyone completely opposite, which makes people lose their mind. Is I go, every single one of you in this room has some kind of racial bias.
Mhm.
And I'll get, no, 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 no. I was like, cool. I'm going to teach you the mandatory slides I have to teach you for the next 10 minutes. And then the next 50 minutes after that, we're going to play a bunch of games. And then you're going to see that you have a bias. And what they don't realize is all the games that were created are games that actually make people accidentally spill out their biases, how they feel about a specific race or a specific type of people. And in doing that, because it's a game and because I'm making them say it, I'm making them think about it. At the end, I have other people who hurt. Like the whole time, I'm like, hey, while we're playing these games, I want you to write down what you hear people say that you think is out of pocket. And then at 50 minutes into the training, we stop and I have people, all right, who said it and what did they say? And you hear some crazy off the wall stuff. And yeah. And then the person like, I didn't say that. They're like, yeah, you did. You said it. But I think it's the same way. You tackle race issues and you tackle stigma and you tackle things like that and societal norms that are wrong and generational norms that are wrong by acknowledging that they exist and then addressing the problem. But until you acknowledge it, then it's just going to stay there.
Yep, most definitely. Let's transition over to the Black History influences. And can you tell us, why is Nelson Mandela such a powerful influence in your life?
Oh, for me, with Nelson Mandela, it has to be the fact that he had his principles and he stood on his principles no matter what. And that is just something I think that anybody um, who believes in anything can idolize. Nelson Mandela spent time locked up because of what he believed in,
Mhm.
and just not the mark of any leader. The mark of any true leader for me is that person refusing to be moved in the face of any kind of opposition. And just when it comes to leaders, especially the Black leaders, um, Nelson Mandela is it. If you want to talk about somebody who stood on what he believed in and refused to be moved, be swayed, be that he's it for me.
So, what lessons did Mandela's leadership teach you about resilience?
Probably still the number one lesson is that you're going to be met with opposition. There's always going to be people that disagree with you. There are going to be people that are going to, try to tear you down and get rid of you and, make everything you're trying to do go away. But you need to be ready and you need to be resilient yourself and be willing to take those blows because they're going to come and they're going to come again and again and again. But you have to have the mental fortitude. You have to have the drive, the desire, and the passion to stand your ground, take the blows, and then show everyone that is against you that you're not going anywhere. And I think that's like the biggest thing when it comes to resiliency. You pull from him, and anyone who knows anything about him or his history, you can see that dozens of times people tried to, undermine him, make him move, pull him out of the sphere of influence he was in. And every single time he stood his ground. He refused to be moved. He refused to be swayed.
So, tell us, how has your father shaped your values and vision?
My father has always been that individual that has that message of if you could help somebody, if you have the power to help somebody, you help them. Like no questions asked. And I think a lot of, what that mentality did to me as a child was kind of sear into my brain that going out of your way or committing time and passion and effort to helping others is never going to be, something that's done in vain. It is always going to yield what you want it to yield. Because like I said earlier, when it comes to like the books or how do I how do I measure success? If you can just help one person,
Mhm.
then you're good. My father used to always say when I was young, one, if you're going to go do something, give it 100%. If you're not, don't waste your time.
Mhm.
And I think that was the army. And my father was a professional boxer as well. And then he also was working in the police after his service.
Mhm.
So it was a very much, you know, do or die mentality.
Mhm.
But I still teach that to the soldiers that I train now and the people I lead because it's so true. It's and that I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've carried forward. But if I'm going to go do something and I'm not going to give it 100% of my effort, don't do it. There's no point.
So it sounds like that's where structure means a whole lot to you because that's all
Yeah,
about structure.
absolutely.
What does Black fatherhood mean to you personally?
Personally, I think it's the key to success. I might not be the most favorite person for saying it, but I honestly think the absence of Black fathers within the Black community is like the number one issue within our entire community. It's not gangs, it's not drugs. Um, it is definitely the absenteeism of the father figure.
Mhm.
So being able to have had that and then also providing it for my children, I think it's very much underrated the role a father plays in a child's life. And being present, being there, being that mentor, sometimes a disciplinarian. Um, it is key and it is essential to actually, develop into a person that one can function in society, but also just a decent person. Now, I'm not saying um, children with single mothers don't grow up to be great people, but if you're looking, I have also have a background in criminal investigation. If you're looking at statistically, children who grow up in a household without a father have almost 3 to 4 times more percentage of a chance of not ending up in a good situation. I don't want to get too deep into stuff with you. I don't want to pull this conversation into another direction. But
Mhm.
statistically, the influence of having a father, especially within the Black community in homes, is essential to childhood development and growing up and having that example. But it just makes sense too when you think about it, right? At least for males, when you grow up, and you look back on your life and you say, hey, I did this because of this, or I did this because of that, or I am this way because that's what I saw. Who is that person for a male that you're always tied to? It's either a grandfather, an uncle, or it's your father. Sometimes it's an older brother if you have one. But there's always, you know, that patriarch. And if you don't have that growing up, um, you know, who's to teach you all of those things?
How has Malcolm X's clarity and conviction influenced your advocacy?
Oh, that's a very easy question. I think we can all say when it comes to Malcolm X, what he thought he said. There was no filter. There was, just raw emotion and truth. And as you know from like my book and how I talk, I try to do the same thing. I try to be as raw as possible, as truthful as possible. I am not going to, beat around the bush at all. And like I said earlier, very similar to how he would speak when you say how to handle the stigma. Cool. Here's the stigma. I'm gonna say it in front of you, and I'm gonna make you talk to me about it. I'm gonna make you face this. Where other speakers and other leaders were more like a, hey, this is wrong, and kind of passively talk about it. Um, just in my opinion, there's very, very minimal that was passive about Malcolm X. He was very much a person of action in words and physically as well.
So, what does Maya Angelou's grace and literacy, literary power, mean to you as a writer?
like I said, when it comes to connecting, right? Anybody who's read anything knows Maya Angelou. It doesn't matter if you weren't alive when she was, if you might not even know it was her
Mm.
that wrote it, but almost everyone knows some kind of quote, right? And when it comes to a reader and a writer relationship, that is what all of us should strive for. You want to be that writer that just transcends you transcend culture, you transcend age, you transcend time, and it wasn't relevant just to when it was written. It's forever relevant. It is relevant to anyone, and to just have that grace with a piece of paper and a writing utensil, and to be able to just flow words the way that she would flow them, and convey such emotion and such passion onto paper is is just amazing. And it's just personally anything, any writer could just only hope to be, at that level, um, at one point in their career. If I ever get to a point where someone, puts my poem up next to one of hers, um, I'm it. That's good. I don't even think I need to keep writing at that point.
How do you carry Dr. King's vision into your work and relationship?
So Dr. King, when he spoke, it wasn't just always about one group of people. It was about all group of people. It was about community. It was about getting rid of. If you want to talk about a stigma breaker, that is he is the stigma breaker. And my mental health advocacy and all of the things that I do in that realm are all very much established the way that he does it. And I like to look at his speeches. I like to read some of the writings that are based on what he had said, and kind of encompass that, because in order for you to actually make a change, and he knew this, in order for you to make a change, you can't just say words. You can't just get a small group of people. It has to be an entire community, an entire society that gets behind you. And you can't just get behind you as an individual. It has to be, a collection of people. And when it comes to speakers, and when it comes to people that are trying to make a change, Dr. King was that person who understood that there needed to be a change, but also understood that you can't make a change if you're just trying to reach one side of that realm, that argument. You have to bring everyone together. And they're really, if you ever listen, I'm sure, well, I don't have to say if you ever listen, but if you've listened to his stuff, he never really, played the finger pointing game. He just highlighted the things that were wrong, and the things that were happening, and the things that he's seen. And by doing that, he wasn't creating hatred. He was creating compassion. And at least with the mental health world, that's what we need. All day I can sit here and point a finger at somebody, and deal with all that. But in order for me to actually make a change and make society want to change with me and support what I'm doing, I need to convey it in a way that isn't placing blame, but just highlighting the issues, and not placing guilt, but say, hey, together, all of us, we have gotten to this point. Now we need to get together, identify the issues, and work our way back.
So, what does Black history mean to you on a personal level?
I mean, I would probably say that the same as any other history. Um, it is who we are. It is our culture. It is our past. It will continue to influence our present and our future. But it's also pride for me, at least. I have family from very different areas, very different backgrounds, and I have always been really involved with my history, whether it's my cultural history, my background history. Um, I think in order for us as a society, as a community, as a group to grow, we all need to understand our past, our heritage in order to move forward, right? They always say that if you don't study the past, or the reason why we study the past is so that it doesn't repeat itself. We need to know and have an identity of who we are and where we've been to make sure that we're moving forward in a progressive way that honors, you know, our upbringing. I say that all the time because I get into arguments. I just got into an argument the other day with a young black man that I was talking to, and I had said, and this might not be popular, but I said I believe that some of the community and culture has lost their way. And he said, "What?" And we had talked about rap, and rap is a very touchy subject with a lot of people. And I said, "Well, I listen to R&B, I listen to blues. I stopped listening to rap in like the early 2000s." And he goes, "Well, why? That's our culture." And I said, "Where in our culture did we decide that, you know, objectifying women and throwing out curse words and doing all of this stuff and drugs and gang stuff, and when do we decide that this was our culture?" And then I was like, "Is not," and then I would name people like Dr. King. I'm like, "Is that not our culture? Is not blues music our culture?" Which blues and gospel are two of the oldest music styles out there, period. And they are deeply rooted in our culture and heritage. And we got into this whole thing of about music, because, like I said before, music transcends everything, right? Everyone can communicate with music, and it was actually through that I was able to get him to come to a common ground with me and realize that he was idolizing some people that he probably shouldn't have been idolizing. And I won't say his name or anything, but he got into gangs and he was into drugs and a couple other things. And like I said, it was just recently, but he had told me that he's gonna, you know, look at some of the stuff I said and look at where he's at and kind of reevaluate everything. And that's why I think and that's why I think it's so important to bring that up, but also why it's so important for us to actually know our heritage, because I think it's getting, personally, I think our heritage, our culture, and our communities getting twisted, and people are mixing things that they want to say are our culture, when sure, maybe it's shifted that way in the last decade or so. But if you're talking heritage, you can't just say, "Oh, well, this guy from 2 years ago." That No, that's not heritage. Heritage is, and history is, all the way back to gospel, and all the way back to knowing figures like Maya Angelou, Harriet Tubman, and all of these other figures. I'm military, so I have a lot of love for the 54th Infantry Division. Anyone who knows history in the Black community knows that was the first all infantry Black unit to fight in the Civil War. I'm also a huge lover and supporter of the 9th and 10th Cavalry Regiments, which were the Buffalo Soldiers. And that's our heritage. That's our stuff. Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen. That's our heritage. Black culture and Black heritage and history. It's just a history of people that, no matter what society threw at them, no matter what someone told them their worth was, they refused to take those words and that hate, and they refused to hate back. And instead, they dug in and showed everyone else that they were wrong. I mean, perfect example is the Tuskegee Airmen Project. Nobody wanted it to work. It was in the papers that they said Black pilots weren't smart enough to fly planes. They were the best pilots the military had ever seen, with one of the best records, period, ever. And despite people wanting to shut them down, and despite, if you've ever seen the propaganda that was put out in Germany about this, they had pictures of gorillas in airplanes and all of that. It didn't matter. And what they did is what they knew that they would, and they wanted to break that mold. They wanted to show people that, they're wrong. But instead of meeting hate with hate, like you see so much now, um, they met hate with, resiliency and compassion and drive. And I can't remember who said it right now, but um, a long time ago, I met a woman who had told me that the way that you deal with racism and the way you deal with hate is by succeeding. And the reason why she told me this is because I grew up in an area. We moved out of the area I grew up in. But when I moved to the new area, I was in a place where I had a teacher that call me out and say like black people refer to their grandparents differently than white people. And I was like 11, 12. And I'm the only black kid in the classroom. And he like points at me like, what do you call your grandparents? And I got so upset. I'm like, grandma and grandpa. Am I supposed to call them something else? You know? And but like that's what I was dealing with, and I wish I could remember who this woman was right now, and it's gonna kill me. But how true is that? You deal with racism and you deal with hate by succeeding. Don't let it. She basically she was just telling me, you don't let it get to you. You don't let it bother you, and you damn sure don't meet hate with hate.
Mhm.
If you really wanna get under their skin, succeed.
So my final question for you is this: what message do you want Black creatives and leaders to take from your story?
The first thing I'll say is don't ever let anyone tell you what you can or cannot do. And don't let anyone ever put you into a box. You know, that's the biggest thing that's happened to me over and over again. Oh, it's too much work, or oh, this, or oh, you were just doing this thing. You should stay out of this realm. If you are passionate about something and you have a drive to do it, don't let anyone tell you whether what you're doing is the right thing or whether it's going to be successful or not. You're the only one that can decide if it's going to be successful or if it's going to fall through. All right, and it'll be on your terms. And then once you do take that step, just be ready and be willing to accept the hardships, the hurdles, and the time and effort that you're going to have to put into it. I wish I could tell people, hey, if you want to get into your own business, you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to get into an enterprise, it's simple, it's easy. You just start like all the commercials, like, oh, you can establish an LLC, and then, and that's all the commercial shows you. But they don't show you, yeah, you established the LLC. That is easy. You're right. Now what? You know, there, and there's no commercial for the next 100 things you got to do.
Right.
And that being said, so if you're going to get into the field of entrepreneurship, if you're gonna start a business, be confident in yourself and just know that if you really want to get to a certain point with that business, you're going to get there. Is it going to happen right when you want it to? No, it won't. And nothing ever plays out in the business realm the way that you planned it to. I mean, for me, I told myself, yeah, like 3 months, I'll have millions of copies of my book sold and all this other stuff. And then 3 months after I published the book, I think I was at like 700 copies. And I'm sitting there, smiling, talking to myself like, I mean, we fell short, a little short, but we'll get there. But the other big piece of advice I'll give people is when you do set out to do this stuff, make sure that the goals you set for yourself are realistic. Because if you set unrealistic goals and then you don't meet them, it will discourage you a little bit. So just remember, everything happens over time, right? As everyone heard 1,000 times, Rome wasn't built in a day. You're going to have to slowly take yourself to where you want to be. And the best way to do that is, as we say in the military, is set your sights on the 50-meter target. What that means for any non-military folks is you set your goal to something that's very attainable, that's in the near future, and you focus. And once you get to that goal, you move to the next goal. Once you get to the next goal, and you just keep going. And eventually all these little, short-term goals pile up to a long-term goal that you are trying to reach. And you'll get there.
So in closing, I want to thank you, for once again coming and sharing not just your story, but information that's really, really pertinent and important to people in our communities. To learn some things that maybe a lot of people have different crafts or things that they want to do, but to also understand what the entrepreneur journey is all about. Also to learn, as your advocacy work, the importance of that, your creative space of writing and why you write and the things you write about, why you write about those things. All of those things come around full circle, whole 360. And they come around because they make a difference not only to people on the surface, but as you get further and further into time, as people get older and they get to understand that much more and they get that much more wiser, they get to understand the importance of what not just storytelling is about, but that creative space as a whole. Because it's that creative space that brings out all of the power, all of the wisdom, all the knowledge, all the way you want a story to not just be seen, told, and heard, but how it's seen. That's something that, as we think about, our young people in particular, we got to be proud of those that are out there trying to do that at this point. We're actually proud of the work that you're doing right now as well, because that makes a difference and the meaning is what it's all about. So I definitely want to thank you for doing that. And hopefully we'll get a chance to see you again in our next season. And,
Absolutely.
I definitely appreciate you for being here. For those of you that are tuning in on all 8 of our channels that we're streaming, I want to thank you very kindly for supporting us. But I would really appreciate your support if you have not yet, if you're on the YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed and enabled all the notifications, I would definitely appreciate if you would take the time to do that, because once you do that, you will have the opportunity to catch each and every show that we do live. You'll get that show live as well as you have the opportunity to go back and watch all and every episode that we've ever done. And you too can get those lessons that maybe from shows that you've missed, and to understand exactly what this platform is about. You will also see on those YouTube channels, in the banner, you'll see that QR code. You scan that QR code because it is definitely live. It allows you to actually go and join our community. We have a community that's set up to where one side of there you can watch the show there. The other side is your networking side. You will also be able to go in and connect with other people, where you get to network and chat and learn some things from other folk, as well as they might learn something from you. You'll also have the opportunity to do a post there. But the main thing that we want to make sure that we keep this community close is by, when you go there, you'll see a poll where what we're asking each and every individual that has joined the community or go inside the community to please cast your vote for the person that you think should be the America in Black and White Person of the Year. Our final poll and answers for whoever that person is will be displayed, and we will announce that on our year-end special on December 31st. So as we go into this wonderful weekend, you guys have a great weekend. We will be back Monday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with another great show. I want to thank you, Alexander, again for being here. And I want to thank each and all of you, every individual out there that's watching, and hope to see you guys Monday evening here on America in Black and White, where we will continue to color conversations on the canvas of America. You guys have a great weekend.